Okay, we will go ahead and begin. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for coming to our webinar for ICL on the Compatibility Advantage, reducing costs through efficient fertility and crop protection programs. My name is Cheyenne Stiles, and your speakers and presenters today are going to be Christi Falen and Manny Zepta. Christi is an agronomist and product lead and an ICL, and she's an ICL, of course. Manny is a technical sales manager. Um, oop. You can earn credits at the end of the webinar. We will be showing the QR code, and make sure you are in your CCA app, and you can go ahead and scan that QR code to get your credits. So I'm going to give the floor now to Christi to go ahead and begin our webinar. Thank you, everybody.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. We are happy to have you here and wanted to start it off a little bit and talk about ICL as far as we are a global company. ICL Growing Solutions is the division that Manny and I specifically work in, but we do have multiple different divisions. We have industrial, a potash division, and a phosphate division. But the specific area, again, that we work in is specialty fertilizers that we provide for the industry and for growers. So we're excited to share some things with you today about that. So one of the big things that we're talking about today is compatibility, focusing on it from the standpoint of not just convenience, but what can we do so that we can have it be a return on investment driver for growers. We know that there's been a lot of pressure in the industry, a lot of growers facing a lot of costs. And so what can we do to be able to maximize the return on investment for the growers? So what can we do then related to the spray costs, the labor, the fuel, and also reducing crop stress? So tank mixing is definitely something that we do all the time, but what can we do to maximize all of those in that particular tank, and what formulations, what water quality, all of those sort of things certainly play a role in not having compatibility failures. Because we know that if they fail, then we're not only looking at the downtime and the lost efficacy, but also the crop injury that can come with that. So overall, compatibility offers operational efficiency, and how can we maximize that? So we want to think about in today's what we're dealing with and reducing costs and trying to maximize our return on investment. We need to think about reduced spray trips, improved performance, also better nutrient uptake, better nutrient use efficiency, while at the same time reducing that crop stress and the application risk. So where do we start? We definitely have to start with the water quality, depending on what the pH is, how hard it is it cold water, is it warm water? All of those are definitely going to impact what we can and can't do as we start to pull together those tank mixes. Also, the fertilizer formulation, we focus on trying to provide formulations as we're doing the innovation, the product development, that will provide the maximum compatibility. So that's definitely a piece to the puzzle. And then we need to think about the mixing order. We have our normal, what we would do, our whales or dales, and familiar with those, but also anything else that comes along. And we have to think about water volume and making sure that we're diluting those tanks out and not getting them overall too hot so that we're not burning the plant and we're not having those crop safety concerns. Overall, we are going to show you some examples that we'll go through today but we always want to make sure that we're jar testing and doing a compatibility test before we start out in the field. Okay, so as we start thinking about these compatibility solutions, again, we want to make sure that we design the nutrition for compatibility and tank mix performance, and making sure that we're having optimum utilization, optimum nutrient efficiency, and we do not want to have anything plugged up as we're going along. So I'm actually going to turn it over to Manny and let him talk some about some of these water quality issues and some of our formulation.
Great. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Christy, for the intro. Yeah, my name is Manny Zapata. As mentioned earlier, I am a local TSM for the California coastal region of California. We're going to be talking a little bit more about the interaction of our acids that we have to offer, and how does that equate to dollars and cents and use efficiency at the field level. So, one of the common issues that we've seen over the years, especially in California, we use quite a bit of drip or drip systems that can be either micro sprinklers, micro drippers, or if not, just the drip tape itself, either high, low flow, or medium flow type of situations. PC tape, that type of thing. But what we do know is that on the coast, we have very high bicarbonates. And what you're seeing here on some of these pictures is just a buildup of using just standard fertilizers. I'm talking about pH neutral, or if not high pH fertilizers, or just the fact that you might not even have your water treated. These are some of the issues that you're seeing, right? We're seeing you'll have some incompatibility when it comes to certain fertilizers, just because of the high bicarbonate, high pH levels that you have in the water. Ties up pretty much a lot of the items that you're already injecting or putting in. That's one of the takeaways that I've seen, is that we put in fertilizers, but we don't realize exactly what we do have in our water, and how does that really equate to the efficiency or the plant nutrient uptake of that fertilizer that you're applying. The hard water, the high pH levels that we have, that really does tie up our calcium availability. Even though we can see it, literally it's on your drip system, it's not available. It's in a form where the plant's not taking it up. It's also causing some other issues where you might have some other tie-ups within the soil. So that has been an issue, and that's something we're going to talk about. We're going to also discuss some solutions to counteract those effects that we have. You want to go to the next slide? So we're going to talk a little bit more about Nova Peak Acid. It is a proprietary product of ours. It's a 06020. It is a water-soluble fertilizer, a very highly soluble fertilizer. Probably the most cleanest and effective phosphate representation in a water-soluble fertilizer that is out there currently in the market. It is a patent, like I said, it is a patented product. It is reactive. It's something where we actually do it at the plant level. At the production level, not the plant level, but at the production level, and we dry it out. We have it in a form where when you lay it out into your tanks, or you mix it, it completely dissipates, and it has a pretty high solution. I believe we're at around between 5.5 pounds per gallon, somewhere around there, when we dilute it. But at the field level, I would recommend that you go somewhere between 4 and 4.5 pounds, just because you're not using hot water. But overall, what it does, it lowers down your pH. It does clean up your lines, even though we don't really use it as a line cleaner, but you can use it as a line cleaner. And more so than anything, you'll see a lot of secondary effects that applying peak acid into your program will do. So we have that in also in different formulations. We have it it's in our Agrolution pH low line, and we also have it in a peak acid LQ, which is a liquid, the most soluble form of peak acid in a liquid form, and that's called peak acid LQ. So this is something that I wanted to share with you. Um, this is a grower that has a pH of 7.9 pH out in the field. And it really didn't understand exactly how the agrilution flow worked. So we applied an application of 63131. So his tank, when he was mixing it in the tank, the pH dropped to 3.0 in his mixing tank. But at the time when he started injecting directly into his lay flat, he couldn't believe that, after injecting 63131 into his tank line, it actually dropped his pH quite a bit. And he got it down to a 6.6 as he was injecting. So, we have a lot of misconceptions of thinking, well, if I put it in an acid, it's really going to affect my plant. It's going to hurt me. No, and it'll actually do the opposite. It's actually going to put you in the optimum range where you would like to be. In this case, he ended up being at 6.6, and the grower was very happy seeing the results. Next slide. So like I mentioned earlier, the performance of peak acid is very unique. It dissolves bicarbonates and increases the available the P availability and its uptake. One of the issues that we have with phosphates in general, if you add in a standard neutral P or neutral phosphate, they're not bad fertilizers. The only issue that you have is that it doesn't really translocate as well within the soil horizon or within the bed. Now, I got to be very careful about that, right? I mean, the book always tells us that P is immobile, P does not move. And that is true to a level, but it also depends on the form of P that you're applying. So in this case, we're applying an orthophosphate ion that is acidified. So on the contrary to what we all believe about phosphates, this particular type of form of phosphoric acid that we apply with Nova Peak acid actually gets into areas and crevices where it would normally not be able to move as well just because of its low pH throughout the soil horizon. So the potassium source of peak acid is very clean. Like I said, it's a reactive product, so it's free of chlorides. There are no chlorides in this form. And the other part that I mentioned earlier is that the secondary effects of Nova Peak acid is that peak acid will actually free up a lot of calcium within the soil horizon and the bicarbonates that you're also applying. So that's something that we see the effects of peak acid, but in reality, what we're seeing also is a huge amount of secondary effects. It releases calcium, it releases magnesium, available calcium, available magnesium, and some of the other micronutrients that you may not believe that are available. But adding peak acid into your regimen, you'll start seeing a lot of improvement within the uptake of your plant. So one other item that we've seen with peak acid is that you can actually mix in calciums with it. Now, we've always heard that don't mix calcium with phosphates, right? You're going to get rock phosphate. This is different. This is a phosphoric acid where it actually dissolves your calcium and it leaves it in an available form. So if you're looking into maybe mixing in calciums with this, I do recommend, we're talking about what goes in first. First put in your acids, mix that in, let that dissolve, then go ahead and add in either your Can9 or calcium nitrate or even magnitrate for that matter. And that mixes out very, very well. As you can see in the picture there, you can see that it's not as clouded up. Actually, it's not clouded up at all. So next slide. This is just a quick little cheat sheet compatibility chart. You can see all in the red is pretty much calcium. Calcium has a hard time with almost every other fertilizer that's out there other than Can17 and Can9. In this case, you can put in peak acid first. Like I said, it's all very important. Is the lineup, right? What goes in first mixing your acids, then adding your calciums or your calcium nitrate, and you're going to be completely fine. You'll really like the effect of what you're going to see. So now I'm going to hand this over to Christy. She's going to talk a little bit more about the trials that we have with Dr. Jerry Wheeler and the effects of peak acid and the comparison of peak acid to sulfuric acid, which is really interesting.
Yeah, thanks, Manny. So I guess Manny mentioned it as well, and a big thing on the water that we need to think about when we're doing that is not only the quality and the pH and the hardness, but also the temperature. So if we have a colder temperature in the field of the pec acid, we don't have the same solubility per gallon. And that's the same sort of thing that we would face with any of the fertilizers. But if we have warm water, then we can get it in at 5.5 pounds per gallon as a max solubility. So solubility, along with the water quality, water temperature, definitely impact things overall on what we can do. As Manny mentioned, in thinking about the pH of the soil, these are a couple different Arizona soils that you can see. Their pH are starting at about 8 to 8.6. And then as you add 10 to 20 pounds per acre of the NovaPec acid, you can decrease the pH, but then you're increasing your nutrients, your magnesium, your potassium, your phosphorus, but also the calcium. So if we look through some of this data and we think about some of the summaries that go with it, there is a phosphorus increase and release as we decrease that pH from not huge amounts to over 63%. The same thing with the potassium, small increase to 100 parts per million. In a pear orchard in Oregon, we put on the Agrilution pH low 631-31. The commercial orchard there saw the same results where we nearly doubled the P and the K, and we increased the yield significantly. So we saw the same thing multiple different places, lots of different field examples of how it's been efficient from a nutrient efficiency standpoint, and how the pH really impacts not only the compatibility, but the nutrient use efficiency and the availability to the plant.
Christi, I'd like to add that over the years, my field experience, I've been very versed with sulfuric acid systems. I've actually installed those myself in the past. The one thing that really strikes me with this last slide that you just showed in that chart was the effect of peak acid when you compare it apples to apples to sulfuric acid. We come in with the misnomer of thinking that sulfuric acid is going to open up your soil horizon, it's going to open up other nutrients that you have locked up in the soil. And what we found through this study was it was completely the opposite. Sulfuric acid does adjust your pH, but it really has a hard time making a lot of those elements that are already in your soil available. The one unique thing about peak acid is that peak acid actually does that idea that it'll actually open up a lot of the current elements that are in your soil. And that's what this slide really is showing you, is that it'll increase the uptake of calcium. It'll increase the availability of P overall. It almost sounds unbelievable, but trust me on this one. Once you start applying peak acid, you will see the effects in the field almost immediately within a couple of days. You can see the effects.
Yeah, Manny. So even last year, I was trying some onion and potato ground that we were working with, and we saw where if we put the sulfuric acid on and we're treating the water and we're lowering the pH of the water, but we actually can add a smaller amount of pec acid to when we fertigate, and then we're looking at adjusting the pH of the soil and making the nutrients more available that way. And as we adjust the pH of the soil slightly with the NovaPec acid, but we make those nutrients more available in the root zone, then we saw some really big benefit. So that was really good from that standpoint. So one thing that we try to do is if you're doing an initial trying to lower the pH with the NovaPec acid and get that nutrient use efficiency benefit, the compatibility benefit, we usually try and go with 10 pounds per acre when we first start off, and then we reduce it down to 5 pounds per acre when we're doing it with in-season fertigation. So here you can see a range of what we would do in those different scenarios, looking at the total for the season of what we would need it to be, and spreading it out where we do that initial drop of after the 10 pounds. And then we go and say maybe we can even go down to 3 pounds of the pec acid every week on a fertigation basis. Anything else, Manny, that you'd like to add on this one?
No, I think you pretty much hit it. Yeah, peak acid really, you can use it at any time of the season, right? But if you're looking to to increase your root mass, give yourself a little bit more of an established plant, this is a great way to start out your overall fertilizer program. So for the most part, we do start in certain specialty crops, 10 to 15 pounds per acre. It's almost hard to believe, but that actually just gets you going. And as you start, slowly throughout your season, just start spoon feeding it. You just see overall positive effects. I mean, and that goes for not just at the time of application of peak acid, it also goes for subsequent applications that you're going to be adding of other fertilizers. You'll start actually somewhat transforming that soil horizon, that rhizosphere, into a area where the nutrients that are being applied are going to be more available than normal.
Yeah. So just I guess another thing on thinking about the solubility and thinking about this examples with strawberries, but if you have an MKP source, a monopotassium phosphate, 0.5234 would be standard, what we would utilize. Very good product. Does have a pH of about 4.5 when you have a 1% solution, so it has a slight buffering effect. So if you need that for your herbicide, insecticide, fungicides, that's a good thing. But then in addition to that, pec acid, if you're doing it and you do it at a 1% solution, it's about a 2 pH. So it definitely lowers the pH a little bit farther. And in this particular example, you can see the weeks and the amount of pec acid in the MKP that was put on. But let's go and think about the pH adjustment. It's not a huge amount. We're talking from 6 to 5.5. But this is backing up kind of what Manny and I are saying of not only the compatibility, but the nutrient use efficiency that you can get with this product. You can see that there's 19% higher phosphorus in the leaves. There's also 2% higher potassium. And that was even with a lower starting point of 830 parts per million compared to 910 in the soil. And then in addition to that, we know that we get limitations with our soil pH on our micronutrients. So we were able to get better micronutrient uptake. And then how did that work out as far as yield? We got a 13.9% higher yield increase. So again, let's look for formulations that we can utilize that help us with being able to do maximum compatibility and maximum yield potential and maximum nutrient use efficiency. So if we think about it from the standpoint, this is obviously not an all-inclusive look at the portfolio, but just a few examples of some of our portfolio, and you think about when they can be utilized. So our Agrolution pH low Nova Pec acid that we've been talking about, acidic type formulations that help you when you need that and help with the compatibility, and they can be fertigated. If you need a neutral pH type of a product, then the Challenge would be a good option. Biostimulants isn't quite registered yet in California, but other states it is. So it's a great option that you can utilize across the board, whether you're looking at fertigation, chemigation, insecticides, fungicides, herbicides. It can actually be used for all of them. And then, the Nova Elevate, Pulse, and Flow, good options for insecticides, fungicides. Bios Jet with your fertigation. Nova Finish is versatile, as well as the Extra Formula One. There's multiple different analysis, but those are phosphites. So you would be looking at foliar applications, can utilize them some on the fertigation side as well. And then establish is looking at a seaweed and humic acid combination that you can do early on with your fertigation. So we try to make sure that all of our formulations are as compatible as possible. So we do think about the formulation type, and we have our formulation chemist, Luis, that helps us with that and the solution chemistry. But we also need to think about the environmental conditions. You know, we don't want to apply when the plant is too stressed, too hot, all of those things. And then our mixing sequence, as I mentioned, your whales or dales that we would follow the same practices. We also try to really make sure that our salt index is down for crop safety, and then also the chloride for crop safety, but also because of it impacting the compatibility, as well as thinking about either the nutrients are or aren't chelated to maximize the tank stability. So some metrics, we've obviously talked about pH. That's definitely a big one they always want to test your water, know how hard it is as well, how many bicarbonates do you need to neutralize, and then look for high purity, high quality products, and think about products that what are the solubility as far as the pounds per gallon. So like an MKP would be 1.9 versus the PEC acid would be 5.5. And then we have a Nova High Peak where it would be 7 pounds per gallon. So those definitely impact it. Then when we think about practical do's and don'ts, obviously we've talked about evaluating the water quality, sending it off for analysis so you know what you're working with, you know your mixing order, and then really making sure ahead of time that you're thinking through what tank mixes would be good and always wanting to jar test. You can do sometimes the translaminar fungicides along with the fertility. Do be cautious when you're putting on nitrogen and your other fungicides. Make sure that you're minimizing the burn potential. And again, not when it's hot and dry, not if the leaves are really stressed, if you don't want to have that burn that comes along with it. Okay, so Manny, anything that you think here as far as big things from your perspective?
Yeah, you've covered it pretty well. I would have to say that when it comes to selecting and understanding what foliars you want to apply or integrate within your spray program, the one thing you also got to be very careful and be a little bit more considerate about is the type of adjuvant or sticker that you're applying with your fungicidal sprays. I personally, I prefer that if you're going to be applying any type of fertilizer within or incorporating a fertilizer foliar on your plant, I would do it with a fungicide. That seems like it's probably the least impacted, or I would say the least chance of having any type of crop burn or anything like that. But the type of adjuvant, whether it's an MSO or whatever it may be, is very important. You got to be just careful with that. Be cognizant of what kind of adjuvant you're applying. And going back to the translaminar effect, if you have a fungicide, which there are certain fungicides that are translaminars, I would stay away from using fertilizers just to be on the safe side, or any type of foliar, because you might risk to have some type of phyto. So, but other than that, it's pretty safe with most of your fungicides, with most of your adjuvants, as long as it's not a penetrating type of chemistry or formulation.
Yeah, that's a good point, Manny, on adjuvants, your non-ionic surfactants being your safest, your MSOs or your crop oil concentrate can have, more burn that would come with them. But we do have a whole cross section of adjuvants that are available as well. So that would be you have questions on those, we can talk through those at another point in time.
The one other item I wanted to add too is what's really important in your spray programs is to acidify your water beforehand. Treat your tank. That's one of the biggest issues that I've seen when a lot of growers have said in the past, well, my insecticides don't work that well, but I added an acid. Well, it all depends on when you added it, right? So if you're mixing your chemistry and then you add in the acid afterwards, well, then you automatically just pretty much cut your half-life down to almost half, if not more. So certain insecticides, certain fungicides want you to actually treat your water beforehand and do that if you can. And I would probably do it almost religiously. And if you really want to start seeing the effects of your applications, acidify your water down to a pH level that's acceptable, or within specified instructions within your label restrictions, and hit that target, and then go ahead and mix in your chemicals with it. So super important.
Yeah, for sure. So you put your water in, check your pH, see what you need to adjust. Do you need to do a liquid ammonium sulfate? Do you need to do an additional product in there to condition it? And then do you do your pec acid, or do you need an additional buffer to adjust your pH depending on what you're putting in?
Yes.
So there's a few examples I want to show you here. Like I said, do a jar test on all of the combos, but want to show you a few of the ones that did work. So when we mix NovaPic acid with the seaweed, and then as Manny mentioned earlier, and you saw the picture, you can combine it with calcium nitrate, a CN9, a CN17. So it worked well. If we add another level to that and we say, let's add a zinc rush product in that's got zinc and sulfur along with it, and it's got some organic acids, amino acids, it was still compatible. So that was a good thing. And then we have a whole micronutrient line that are the extra line. This case, it's premium extra. Those are designed to where they have a lower pH and have maximum compatibility. So you can see that the micronutrient package as well with the premium extra was compatible. Give me my maps back. There we go. And then zinc extra was another combination. All of our extra products have the ETS package with them for enhanced translocation throughout the plant. And then they also have a lower use rate. So they're definitely effective from that standpoint and very compatible. Here you can see an older version that is not compatible. So that would be why we have our formulation chemist, and we're constantly developing products that are the best that they can be at maximizing the compatibility and the nutrient use efficiency.
I like to add, Christi, that doing these mixes, especially using peak acid within your mixes and applying your micronutrients with your peak acid, actually chelates your micronutrients even further. So you're actually doing yourself a service by chelating it by using peak acid if you're trying to increase your micronutrient levels. So something to consider that you think you might not even be doing, but you're chelating or complexing your micronutrients. So
yeah, that's great, Manny. So Manny, can you go ahead and explain some of these as far as some thoughts that you have for everybody to be thinking about different combos that they could use?
Yeah, so I've through the years that I've had experience in farming and giving out recommendations, there's certain products that do stand out for me. One of the major ones here, we're looking at the Evolution Flow line. Why do I say that? It's just it has a perfect balance of depending on what you're really going after, perfect balance of NP and K with some of the zinc. And like I was mentioning earlier, that the acid forming part of peak acid actually does a lot of secondary effects. So if you look at the Agrilution Flow 114511, it has a 2% zinc included in that. That zinc is readily available just due to the fact, or more available, shall I say, just due to the fact that the peak acid, which is that 45% makeup of agricultural flow, is peak acid, makes that zinc that much more available to your plant. You will see an effect not only of the NP and K, but also the zinc that's being applied. So I recommend this one to be 10 to 15 pounds. I've seen other places go as high as 20 pounds, depending on how bad your water is. Every 3 to 4 weeks, it really does. It's just a really good maintenance program for your root system, plant structure overall. It really does well. You can also include Bios Jet, 48 ounces with that, and add in a premium extra or CM premium micro mix. Now, if you want to go into the maintenance of your plant, let's just say you're in full production and you just don't want to see your plant go heavily stressed just because it's under load. Agrilution pH low is a great combination. It has pretty much a 2-1-3 type of ratio of NP and K. But the great thing about this mix, and I want to say it's probably one of our leading SKUs within the Agrilution flow line, is that it has 3.3% calcium. That calcium is readily available. That 6% of phosphoric acid really just gives it enough where that calcium can be available. You want to add in a little bit more, and you can include CN9. I've seen guys go in from 2 to as much as 5 gallons mixed in with the 15-6-27 and add in a little humic just to increase your CECs. Seaweed does you well, but overall, I mean, this is a great little formulation that if you want to keep your plant going and you're in peak season, and you want to keep that fruit nice and firm, but at the same time, you still want to grow that fruit, this is a great blend to put in there. Another blend that I've used over the years is the potassium nitrate, in this case, our Nova NK, the 13.5046. I go either to 20 to 25 pounds, as high as 30 pounds, and I mix in a gallon of our Formula One P60. That really does a number. I've seen the plant really respond really well to this. Now, the P60 is a phosphite, not a phosphate. There is a difference in its makeup, but a phosphite essentially, it is a fertilizer, and we have to promote it as a fertilizer, but it also has other secondary effects where it actually boosts the plant health. And I can't say the other word, but anyways, it does a very, very good job. I know I've gone as high as 1 gallon to the acre. If you want to cut down on costs, maybe half a gallon. But truly, if you want to see the true effects of that one, I would add in go out at about 1 gallon to the acre, and you will see that. Remember, potassium nitrate is exothermic, and so your tank will get really cold when you apply it. So it's really hard to solubilize. You put in that 060, it really clears up that tank mix, and it makes your solution nice and clear, and it increases the solubility of Nova and NK. Now, another item that we've added into our lineup as of last year is our liquid version of potassium nitrate 3010. This liquid version is very unique. It has a pH level of 2.5 to 3.5 pH. Plants have reacted very well to this. It's been a blend that has been catching a lot of attention, and it's been making waves out in the industry. So something to look forward to and look for, or ask your local retailer about it. So I would also add in a CMP premium micro mix to that mix. Last but not least, adding in Nova Flow and Nova Finish. These are great blends. These are water soluble blends that you can add into your lineup when it comes to, let's just say you want to add in something that's a lower end but a higher P and K level. You want to increase your bricks for whatever reason that you're seeing that's either having some issues. Great blend to put in. 8-12-40. You can either do that through the drip system, or you can do a foliar and add in a little bit of boron extra that has a very good uptake at very low rates. So last but not least, you also have Nova High Peak, which is a 0-20-20, or it could be a 0-44, but in this case, we do have it in a liquid version of it. And you can add in the boron extra with that. So
Perfect. Thanks, Manny. So here's the backup that you can see of mixing the Nova High Peak, the 0 2020. Again, high pounds per gallon as far as solubility that you can put in, but we are kind of maxing it out. It is compatible with the boron extra, but when we get a really heavy load of product, then it works good for doing as a foliar or fertigating, but not if we're adding additional phosphorus in. That would not be compatible with this particular formulation. Okay, so if we kind of think about the early season nutrition and what we can do overall, the challenge I mentioned earlier is a neutral pH, 832.5, but it also has the high or humic acids, and the lignosulfonic acid comes with it, and our ETS package. So very good from that standpoint for nutrient insufficiency, root growth. As soon as we do have the Biostimulants in California, that would be a great add to it as well. And for any of your other regions that are outside of California, then you can already start adding the Biostimulants. It's a 1001 as far as the analysis, but it has molasses and a yeast extract, promotes the soil enzymatic activity, and also the microbe food. And you can utilize it for a pH of 3.5 and above. But really, as we were mentioning earlier, the Bios Jet, it's a concentrated liquid biochar extract for that early season uniform growth. And you can use it with the Novapec acid and be able to go down to the acidic pHs. And I just mentioned the Nova High Peak liquid. I kind of like to use it by itself and get those high pounds per gallon, or put it with the boron. You know, here, this just kind of shows you, Manny mentioned the flow and the finish. Great options that you can see as far as the NPK, but also the sulfur, the mag, and the boron that comes from flow. And so then from a foliar standpoint, we like to put pulse and flow together. You see the analysis there of why. A great combo across the board. And then the Elevate, if you're after nickel, cobalt, moly, then the Nova Elevate is a great product for that with its high concentration, low use rate for foliar. And why would we do that? You know, here's an example of just 4 ounces of Nova Elevate and the amount of pounds per acre that can see increase. So very positive economic benefit. Very good for nitrogen use efficiency and reducing the ethylene production, so then we can retain more fruit and get better yields. So when we think about some of these foliar combos, I'll start at the bottom and then I'll let Manny do the top ones. You know, the Nova Pulse Flow Finish, we mentioned those as options. You could do them for along with the Boron Extra. And you could do the High Peak, as Manny mentioned earlier, as well as the Formula One, the phosphite that he mentioned, 2 different formulations, the 02926, just straight phosphite. The SW has seaweed already included in it if you're after having that combination, so that you can manage the plant pathogens and the high stress environments. Manny, I'll let you cover those first ones.
Yeah, so standard in our industry applications for foliar fungicides is the use of Nova Peak 05234. We usually apply that at around 5 pounds to the acre. Mix that in with our fungicides, our standard either cap 10s or Elevate. There's actually Elevate, yeah. But I know cap 10 has been kind of hard to come by this last season, so something that you might want to look into. But overall, I mean, it does really well. It has a pH of about 4.5. It does disrupt the overall environment when it comes to the powdery mildew or some of the other issues that we have out there when it comes to pathogenic resistance. I mean, pathogenic multiplication. But overall, Nova Peak does a very good job at disrupting that, and it does control our the powder millet. I'm sorry, but and then we also have the NutriBuilder 30-10-10. That is a great little fertilizer to use when you say if you want to have just a tad bit increase of plant mass, overall size. 30-10-10 does you well at about 3 to 7 pounds of the acre. Some guys go as high as 10. You can add that in with a regalia or a seaweed, but it does a really good job overall. Some guys do use sulfolics with it, but I think for the most part, I've seen it with seaweed, so it does a very, very good job. Uptake K is a potassium acetate. It has an ETS package with that. It has the amino acid, calcium, and it also includes a little bit of molasses that really does enhance the uptake of potassium. So it's 100% available. It's not like it has any issues with incompatibilities or tie-up. The potassium acetate, you don't need a lot to go pretty far with it. So it does a very, very good job overall to increase your brick levels and increase the transpiration ratios within the plant. So, or regulates it. I'm sorry. So.
Yeah, great. So we already kind of touched on these, and you guys have seen them. Manny just touched on the Uptake K, and I showed you the analysis of the flow and the finish, but great products that you can use mid-season and finishing out, mitigating stress, high compatibility, all from looking at it from that standpoint. We always want to be looking for what can we do that we can maximize, again, our cost effectiveness going across the field and partnering. So here you see a combo that we've used on multiple different locations where we can put them with the insecticides, the fungicides, and see a yield response as well as the compatibility. So, and an increase in nutrient uptake. So great combos that we could think about there in planning ahead. And here showed you a field example of what we saw: increased bricks, increased fruit firmness with delayed harvest, less breakdown of the fruit, more red fruit, increased yield and ROI, and then that quality that held up. You have the grower standard on the right, and then you have the Nova Elevate in the middle, and then the Nova Pulse on the left-hand side. So overall, what did it mean to the grower? We've got over $650 per acre that it meant to them. So a positive ROI from putting it on. So that's what we want, is compatibility with our insecticides, fungicides, as well as the nutrition, and having a positive yield and a good mix for the growers. The Boron Extra and Nova Pulse, a good combo here, looking at it from the standpoint of increasing the nitrogen use efficiency of the nodules. We can put it on at herbicide timing if that's the only time we can get across the field, but fungicide timing was definitely where it was important. So pairing the nutrition along with it is an important piece to the puzzle. These are several of the different extra products that I mentioned. Again, they are formulated with lower pH to increase the compatibility and a low use rate because of our ETS package, the enhanced translocation. So that reduces the cost that for storing, as well as the cost of application and what goes in the tank. So good overall from that standpoint. So as far as thinking ahead for this next season and designing compatibility into the seasonal spray programs, make sure, as we mentioned, you start with the water testing, you think about the pH, you think about the temperature, we think about what we're going to put in as far as compatibility and partners. We need to build our programs ahead of time, do jar testing, do compatibility testing, and focus on products that have been formulated for maximum solubility, maximum compatibility. And one thing, I guess, if we just summarize it up and think about some of the things we've talked about, we haven't mentioned it here today, but one thing for you to consider for looking at for this year is Agriform, which are controlled or AgriBlend controlled release fertilizers, as well as polysulfate. It's a gradual release fertilizer. And then a whole cross section of products here that we can utilize during the season. And then as we're synchronizing with crop demand and pesticide applications and compatibility, another whole group of products that we have talked through. Any last comments, Manny, before we move to questions?
No, I'd just like to thank you for the opportunity to share some of these experiences and ideas with the public, and hopefully we have some questions here to answer and any inquiries that you may have. So.
Well, thank you both for giving this presentation. Uh, this is now the time where you can put your questions in the question box. So if you do have any questions, make sure that you add those so that way we can get them answered. So as you can see here, we are moving to the question portion. You can go ahead and scan on the right-hand side to earn your CEU or your CE credits. Just make sure you scan that directly from the app for CEUs. So we do have a question so far. The first question is, would it be good to use Agrolution pH low for fertigation plus Nova Pulse and Nova Flow for berries?
Yeah, so I'll take it first, Manny, and then if you have any follow-ups with that. So the Agrolution pH low, as Manny talked through with you, multiple different formulations that are available starting early in the season and then mid-season. I mentioned an Agrolution pH low 631-31. So there's three main formulations that we would utilize: the 11-45-11, 2% zinc early on. Then we'd swap to the 15-6-27 with the 3.3 calcium. And then as the season progresses, we could go to the 6-31-31 to finish it off and reduce the nitrogen. And so that combination, as far as fertigating, would work great for berries and really any of the crops. It could be utilized for those markets. And then the beauty of the Nova Pulse and the Nova Flow is, as we've seen them, whether we're talking specialty crops in California or we're talking row crops, we've seen the Nova Pulse and Nova Flow combination work really good together. And again, with the insecticides, fungicides, because we can increase the set of either the grain, the fruit, the nuts. So yeah, those would be great combinations. And then the flow, having that additional magnesium, really helps with photosynthesis. We've seen additional photosynthesis that is going on when we can measure it with the chlorophyll when we've done the in-field sampling, and then that goes to the yield.
Well, thank you, Christy. Do you have anything to add, Manny?
Yeah, I would say great question. Yes, your answer to your question about Agrolution Flow, I would definitely use it through the drip system. You really want to see your best ROI would be through your drip system with Agrolution Flow. Add in your 11-45-11. Even throughout the season, you can add in your 6-31-31s, but during time of fruiting, definitely add in your 15-6-27, even add a little extra calcium. But understand that within the Agrolution Flow, you've got the peak acid attributes, right? Where you're going to have a secondary effect of the release of calcium, which is hugely important in the production of strawberries. And then top it off with the Flow, or in this case, the Elevate. The one unique item about Elevate, it's got moly in it, right? So moly does also help with the increased uptake of nitrogen, of N, within your plant. So that's something that you're going to start seeing by having these applications of the pulse and flow. Actually, I'm sorry, the pulse and elevate together. If you can add that in, you will see an increase of uptake within your plant, just due to the moly.
Okay. Very nice. We don't have any other questions, but please, if you do have any questions, feel free to write them in the Q&A box. That way we can go ahead and answer those for you. In the meantime, is there anything else you guys wanted to elaborate further on your guys' presentation?
I would
I'm
just
good.
encourage you to reach out, and if you're on here and there's something that we haven't covered in particular, please reach out to Manny or I or any of the ICL team. We're here to help and provide innovative growing solutions and specialty products for you.
So we had another question come in, but before that, I will say that if you are looking to talk to Christy or Manny, on the registration page, you can see their emails, and then there's also in the email that JCS Marketing sent out, there is their contact information there as well. So the next question is, have you noticed issues with clogging drip lines?
I can answer that one. So here is the thing. If you've never used peak acid in the past, I do recommend that once you start using peak acid, the first shot go in there, inject at about, I'd say about 15 pounds of the acre. Do your injection within 15 minutes of charging your line. Um, Inject it, then turn off your line, leave it overnight, and the following morning, open up the ends of your drip system and just let it flow. Because what's going to happen, it's going to start releasing all that buildup that you had in the past within your drip line, and it'll pretty much clean it up. And then after that, you're actually going to see the opposite of this, right? You're going to see your lines are going to be that much more cleaner. You're going to have a much better uniformity when it comes to irrigation. But yeah, once you start using peak acid and use it regularly, you're not going to have any issues with clogging when it comes to that. Matter of fact, you'll see the opposite. Thank you
Okay.
for the question.
Yes, thank you for your question. Thank you, Manny. Um, the next question is from, I have low soil pH. How does peak acid affect that?
You want to answer that?
Yeah, I'll start. So it depends how low the pH is. We've done it where we have a pH of about 6.5 and 6.4, and we still put on the PEC acid, and we have very good effects as far as nutrient use efficiency because we want it a little bit lower from that standpoint, or if we're reducing it down for berries that need it more. If you
Yes.
have a really low pH and you don't want to reduce it further, then that's where we have products like the Challenge that's neutral pH or the Nova High Peak, and it's more of a neutral pH. And then you have the Nova Peak, which is kind of in the middle, and it's not so low like the PEC acid. So that's where it's important to think through different choices for your soil and which one you would use based on your different soil and growing conditions.
He specified that his acid was 4.5 pH.
4.5. So in that case, I would not probably put on the PEC acid to reduce it lower. I would do more of a neutral pH type of a product.
Perfect. Um, there are no more questions, so we'll give it another couple seconds. If you have any other questions, please make sure you type them in the Q&A box. That way we can get them answered for you. If not, then we will go ahead and end this in a couple of seconds. I just want to thank Christy and Manny for coming on here and giving us this fantastic webinar. You guys gave very detailed descriptions of each of your products and then answered the questions very well. So just thank you both for being here and helping with any questions or concerns on your guys' products.
Great.
And I
Thank you
also
for the
want to,
invite.
Thank
what
you.
was that?
Thank you for the invite.
Of course. I do want to thank everybody was who attended this webinar. You can learn more at icl-growingsolutions.us. That is their webpage. After this webinar, it is going to immediately redirect you to their webpage. So you can also contact them via there or via Christy and Manny's email. Thank you everybody for attending our webinar. Don't forget to scan the QR code in your CCA app if you'd like to get credits, but we will also be submitting them as well.